The story of Jesus healing a man born blind is recorded in John 9:1-41. It is one of Jesus' most remarkable miracles, demonstrating his divine power and revealing deep spiritual truths. As Jesus and his disciples were walking, they saw a man who had been blind from birth. The disciples asked Jesus, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" At the time, people often believed suffering was a direct result of sin. Jesus corrected this idea, saying, "Neither this man nor his parents sinned, but this happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him." Jesus then declared, "I am the light of the world," emphasizing that he came to bring both physical and spiritual sight. Jesus then performed an unusual act. He spat on the ground, made mud with his saliva, and placed it on the blind man's eyes. Then he instructed the man, "Go, wash in the Pool of Siloam." The man obeyed, went to the pool, washed his eyes, and his sight was restored. People who had known the blind man were amazed and confused. Some questioned whether he was the same man, but he confirmed, "I am the man." When asked how he was healed, he simply said, "The man called Jesus made mud, anointed my eyes, and told me to wash. When I did, I could see." The Pharisees were upset because Jesus healed on the Sabbath, which they considered breaking the law. They questioned the man, but he boldly defended Jesus, saying, "If this man were not from God, he could do nothing." Angered by his response, the Pharisees threw him out of the synagogue. Later, Jesus found the man and asked, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" The man asked, "Who is he, Lord, that I may believe in him?" Jesus replied, "You have seen him, and he is speaking with you." The man worshipped Jesus, recognizing him as Lord. The story of the healing of the crippled woman is found in Luke 13:10-17 in the Bible. One Sabbath day, Jesus was teaching in a synagogue. Among the people listening was a woman who had been crippled for 18 years. She was bent over and could not straighten up at all. When Jesus saw her, he called her forward and said, "Woman, you are set free from your infirmity." Then he placed his hands on her, and immediately she straightened up and began praising God. The synagogue leader was angry because Jesus had healed on the Sabbath. He told the people, "There are 6 days for work, so come and be healed on those days, not on the Sabbath." But Jesus rebuked him, saying, "You hypocrites, don't you untie your ox or donkey on the Sabbath to give it water? Then shouldn't this woman, a daughter of Abraham, whom Satan has bound for 18 years, be set free on the Sabbath?" Jesus' words put his opponents to shame, but the people rejoiced at the wonderful things he was doing. The story of Jesus resurrecting the widow's son is found in Luke 7:11-17. It is one of the miraculous accounts of Jesus raising someone from the dead. Jesus was traveling with his disciples and a large crowd when he arrived at the town of Nain. As he approached the town gate, a funeral procession was taking place. A widow's only son had died, and she was mourning deeply. In that culture, losing an only son meant not only emotional devastation, but also financial and social insecurity, as she had no one to care for her. When Jesus saw her, he was moved with compassion and said to her, "Do not weep." Then he walked up to the stretcher carrying the young man's body and touched it. The procession stopped, and Jesus said, "Young man, I say to you, arise." Immediately, the dead man sat up and began to speak. Jesus then gave him back to his mother, restoring her hope and security. The people who witnessed this were filled with fear and awe, glorifying God and saying, "A great prophet has arisen among us, and God has visited his people." The news of this miracle spread throughout the region. One Sabbath, Jesus was invited to dine at the house of a prominent Pharisee. As he entered, the eyes of the religious leaders were fixed on him, watching his every move, hoping to find a reason to accuse him. Among the guests was a man suffering from dropsy, a painful condition causing severe swelling in his body. Jesus, knowing their thoughts, turned to the Pharisees and experts in the law and asked, "Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath or not?" Silence filled the room. No one dared to answer. Without hesitation, Jesus reached out and touched the man. Instantly, his body was restored. His swelling disappeared, his strength returned, and he stood before them, completely healed. The man's eyes filled with gratitude as he praised God. Jesus then turned to the Pharisees and said, "If one of you has a son or an ox that falls into a well on the Sabbath, will you not immediately pull him out?" Again, they had no reply. They had been so focused on their rules that they had forgotten the heart of God's law: love, mercy, and compassion. With this miracle, Jesus revealed not only his divine power, but also his deep care for those in need, showing that love is greater than legalism. Jesus was traveling along the border between Samaria and Galilee when he entered a small village. As he approached, 10 lepers, outcasts of society, stood at a distance, unable to come near because of their disease. Their faces were filled with desperation, their clothes tattered, and their bodies covered in sores. Lifting their voices, they cried out together, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us!" Jesus stopped and looked at them with deep compassion. Instead of healing them instantly, he gave them a simple command: "Go, show yourselves to the priests." Though their healing had not yet happened, the 10 men obeyed, stepping forward in faith. As the lepers walked toward the temple, a miraculous transformation took place. Their sores vanished, their skin became smooth, and their strength returned. They looked at each other in amazement, realizing that they had been completely healed. Excited and overwhelmed with joy, they hurried toward the temple to be officially declared clean. Yet one of them, a Samaritan, stopped. Instead of rushing to the priests, he turned back, overwhelmed with gratitude. Running to Jesus, he fell at his feet, praising God with a loud voice and thanking Jesus for his mercy. Jesus looked around and asked, "Were not 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Has no one returned to give glory to God except this foreigner?" Then, looking at the grateful man, Jesus said, "Rise and go. Your faith has made you well." Jesus was preaching in another town when a messenger arrived with urgent news from Bethany. Lazarus, a dear friend of Jesus and the brother of Mary and Martha, was gravely ill. Hearing this, Jesus did not rush to Bethany, but instead stayed where he was for 2 more days. He told his disciples, "This sickness will not end in death, but it is for God's glory." The disciples were confused. Later, Jesus told them, "Lazarus is dead, but I am going there to wake him up." By the time Jesus arrived in Bethany, Lazarus had already been dead for 4 days. The village was filled with mourners comforting Martha and Mary. When Martha heard that Jesus was near, she ran to him and said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." Jesus replied, "Your brother will rise again." Martha believed in the resurrection at the end of time, but Jesus declared, "I am the resurrection and the life. Anyone who believes in me will live, even though they die." Mary also came to Jesus, weeping, and said the same thing, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." Seeing Mary's sorrow and the grief of the people, Jesus was deeply moved. Tears filled his eyes, and he wept. The mourners whispered, "See how much he loved him." But others doubted, saying, "If he healed the blind, couldn't he have stopped this man from dying?" Jesus went to Lazarus's tomb, a cave with a stone covering the entrance. He commanded, "Take away the stone." Martha hesitated. "Lord, by now there will be a bad odor, for he has been dead 4 days." Jesus reassured her, "Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" The stone was rolled away. Jesus looked up and prayed aloud, thanking the Father. Then, with a loud voice, he cried out, "Lazarus, come forth!" A hush fell over the crowd. Then, from the darkness of the tomb, Lazarus emerged, still wrapped in burial cloths. The people gasped. He was alive. Jesus said, "Unbind him and let him go." Many who witnessed the miracle believed in Jesus, but some Pharisees ran to report to the religious leaders, setting the stage for the plot to kill Jesus.